List through PBS on it.
Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, and the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Foduck, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Hey! Hello. I found my old kite this morning. Isn't she a beauty? Norman gave me this kite. See, Norman and I were friends on a ship together long ago. And Norman loved flying kites. And one day, I was the officer in charge, and Norman thought, well, you know, because we were friends, that he could fly his kite all the time. That's exactly what he did. He'd fly his kite here, and he'd fly his kite there. Well, he just flew his kite everywhere. To tell you the truth, well, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want Norman to stop having fun because of me. Oh, boy. Wish I'd known Theodore back then. Huh? See, he would have told me the story about the time when he was in charge of the harbor cleanup.
The dispatcher was just beginning the morning work meeting. "Tugboats," he said, "it is time once again for the big harbor cleanup." Theodore was excited. Every spring, the harbor got a good cleaning. Maybe I'll get to clean up the sandy beach this year, Theodore thought to himself, or fix the docks. But the dispatcher had a different idea. "Theodore, I have an important job for you," he said. "This year, I would like you to be in charge of the cleanup." "Me? In charge?" repeated Theodore. He felt proud the dispatcher had chosen him. "It's up to you to make sure it happens," the dispatcher went on. "Hank and George will help you." The dispatcher asked Theodore to stay behind after the work meeting to talk about the things that needed to be done. "There is one thing different this year," the dispatcher said. "Yes," said Theodore, listening very closely. "Please don't take the old oil barrels to the dump as usual. Take them to Shediac, the shipyard shed. They will be repaired and reused." Theodore could see there was a lot to do. He tooted his whistle and set off to work. The whole way across the harbor, Theodore thought about his important job. "I'm going to make this best cleanup the harbor has ever seen," he said out loud. Then he saw Hank over the fuel dock. Hank tooted and smiled. "Hi, Theodore. It's going to be fun with you in charge of the cleanup." "Yes, but we have a lot of work to do, Hank," Theodore said seriously. "I thought you and Guysborough could clean the sandy beach." "Oh, sure," said Hank. "But first, I'm going to see if the waves have washed anything interesting up on the beach. Maybe I'll find some treasure." Theodore knew it would take Hank a long time to clean up the beach, but he didn't want to sound bossy and tell his friend to get right to work. "Have a good cleanup," he called. Theodore found George floating off by himself. He was looking kind of grim. "George," he called, "I thought you might like to collect all the old oil barrels from around the harbor and take them to—" "Okay," said George, starting to float off. Before Theodore could finish, you see, George was upset that he wasn't in charge of the cleanup. "The dispatcher said the oil barrels have to go—" "I know where they go," George cut him off again. "I've been in charge of the cleanup before, you know." With that, George peeled off in a puff of smoke. Theodore didn't have a chance to tell George that this year the oil barrels weren't going to the dump. "I guess he knows what he's doing," Theodore said to himself. "I hope." Theodore decided that he would clean up the bottom of the harbor around the docks. He held Shelburne steady while the big barge hauled up all kinds of junk. "We'll have this cleaned up in no time," said Shelburne in his oh-so-slow voice. The bottom cleaning was going well, so Theodore decided to see how the other tugs were doing with their part of the cleanup. Hank was near the sandy beach. "1, 2, 3, can't catch me," he shouted at Guysborough. He was trying to practice tug tag with the garbage barge.
"Of course I can't catch
you. I'm a barge, grumbled the grumpy barge. I can't move by myself. Not that I want to go anywhere anyway. And are we supposed to be cleaning something up?
He added. Oh, Theodore won't mind, Hank told him. He's my friend. It's okay if we have fun.
Fun?
Right, Guysborough.
Don't see the point in that either.
You finished work already, Hank? Theodore smiled. He noticed that Guysborough was empty. The barge didn't have one single bit of garbage in it. Hank, Theodore said slowly, what have you been doing here all this time? Well, I found some neat stuff on the beach, Hank said proudly, showing Theodore the little pile of things he had found along the shore. Did you find any garbage? Theodore asked politely. Oh, I haven't started working yet, said Hank. You know, Theodore, he added, I wish you were in charge of things all the time. This is great.
Me too,
Added Guysborough.
I need a good vacation.
See, I told you Theodore was my friend, and it was okay to have fun, Hank told Guysborough. Theodore was about to tell Hank to start work right now, but after all, he was Hank's friend. He was starting to feel like Hank wouldn't be his friend anymore. It made him stop having fun. I'll check back here later, he said finally, when you're all finished cleaning up. Theodore headed off to check on how George was doing next. Suddenly, he was beginning to feel like maybe this wouldn't be the best harbor cleanup ever. Theodore was on his way to Shitty, the shipyard ship, where George was supposed to be taking old oil barrels. But he saw a very surprising sight. George was at the dump with Brunswick barge.
Oh, hello, Theodore,
Said George.
I'm all finished.
Oh, no, Theodore said slowly. Instead of taking the oil barrels to Shittiac, George had taken them all to the dump.
I told you I knew what to do.
George said proudly. Once again, Theodore didn't know what to say. The day would soon be over, and no one had done anything.
Anything else you need done?
Said George. Then he was already heading off before Theodore could speak. Theodore tried to open his mouth and shout, Stop! Come back! You did it all wrong! But he couldn't. He just knew that George wouldn't listen to him. Nobody was listening to him. This is the worst harbor cleanup ever, he said to himself. Theodore floated back slowly to shelter near the great ocean dock. Theodore? Called the dispatcher. How is the cleanup coming along? Okay, answered Theodore. I guess. The dispatcher could see that Theodore was upset.
Did something happen today?
He asked. No, replied Theodore with a very quiet voice.
That's the whole trouble.
Nothing happened. Nobody did anything.
Oh, well, did you tell them what you needed them to do?
The dispatcher went on. Yes, answered Theodore. That is, well, not exactly.
Well, why not?
Asked the dispatcher. I guess I'm just not good at being in charge, Theodore replied. I'm afraid my friends won't like me if I tell them what to do. Theodore, said the dispatcher, I tell you what to do all the time. And we're still friends, aren't we? Well, yes, sure we are, said Theodore, smiling a little. But you're the dispatcher. We have to do what you say. That's right, agreed the dispatcher, or nothing would get done in the harbor. Right, said Theodore. It's the same when you're in charge, continued the dispatcher. And if George and Hank care about this harbor as much as we do, they'll do what you tell them to. Well, Theodore thought about everything the dispatcher was saying, and he knew that it was time to say something himself to Hank and George. First, he went back to Hank at the sandy beach. Hank was still looking for treasure, and he hadn't cleaned
start cleaning this beach right now, please? We don't have much time left today. Oh, okay, said Hank. And Hank turned and headed off to get Guysborough. Next, it was time to talk to George. They found the bigger tub taking Brunswick back to his dock. Before he could even think what to say, the words came tumbling out all in a big rush. George, the oil barrels you took to the dump need to go to the shipyard shed to be repaired. I tried to tell you before, but you weren't listening to me. Please, take them there right away. George didn't say anything at first. He'd never heard Theodore talk that way.
Fine,
He said at last, and off he went. Theodore was so surprised. He just floated there a moment. That seemed easy enough, he said to himself. Then he thought for a moment. I hope George and Hank will still be my friends. It was almost sunset by the time Theodore had taken Shelburne back to his dock, so he hurried out to the sandy beach. Theodore decided that if Hank hadn't cleaned the beach, he would just have to stay up all night and do it himself. But it turned out that he wouldn't have to do that. The sandy beach had never looked better. Thanks to Hank and Guysborough. Clean as a whistle, said Hank. Just then, they heard a loud tune, and George hurried up.
Theodore? Oh, I was looking for you.
You were? Said Theodore nervously. You see, Theodore was sure that George had come to tell him to take the oil barrels to the shipyard shed himself.
I'm finished,
Said George.
all the barrels are in the shipyard shed.
You both did your jobs, said Theodore.
Of course we did.
Said George. Just like you told us to, added Hank. And Theodore said slowly, we're still friends?
Of course we are.
Smiled George. Why wouldn't we be? Added Hank. Everyone began to head home together. The sun was winking goodnight with a golden glow. And as the tugboats looked around at the sparkling harbor, they all agreed that this was the best big harbor cleanup ever. We're still getting going out there. A great day for flying kites. I'll go right now. Thanks for visiting us here in the big harbor. We'll see you all again next time. What's that, Theodore? Oh. I see. No, thank you. Theodore was just reminding me that I've got a lot of work to do. So, I think I'll show him my kite when I'm finished.